At the Paṇḍitā Forest Meditation Center, the yogis who have come from all over to practice in this 60-day Satipatthana Bhavana retreat, those who have practiced a full 60 days should have a way to measure the benefit that one has gotten for one's life, the profit that one has made on one's life. Sayadaw spoke about the method of measuring this. He talked about how to develop the trainings in order to dispel the gross kilesas, the medium kilesas, and the refined kilesas. And if one practices to completion, and the very gross kilesas are then eliminated, they die down, then that is the farthest stage to go to. But when one's noting is continuous moment after moment, then the obsessive kilesas are destroyed. They have no chance to arise. And if they do arise, one observes them and then dispels them. So at that time, one is able to observe the kilesas as soon as they arise, even before the mind starts to wander. When the mind is just about to start to wander, one can observe. And knowledge arises stage by stage. At the stage of Udiyabbiya Jnana, seeing the fast arising and passing away of phenomena, the Dhamma pulls one along. One is pulled by the Dhamma, and one is no longer bored with the practice. So the happiness that one experiences at that stage is far better than the happiness of the Deva realms. And because of that, one no longer thinks highly of the pleasures that one used to enjoy. And at this stage, the taste of the Dhamma is very pleasant to the yogis. So at that stage, the yogi's faith becomes quite strong. If one reaches the stage of Udiyabbiya Jnana, the stage of seeing the fast arising and passing away of phenomena, then one can decide for one's life. If one continues to practice, one can arrive before long at least at the stage of Arya, the very pure, noble path knowledge. So the faith that arises at this time is called adimauka. It is decisive faith or confirmed faith. So one is able to see the Dhamma of Nama and Rupa, mind and matter, related as cause and effect, arising and passing away very quickly. The old always being replaced by the new again and again. Well, just now it arises and then it immediately passes away. So because of this knowledge, one is able to come to a decision, and one's faith becomes decisive. And this is called in Pali, Okappana faith, sada. So when one has not yet seen for oneself and in oneself, then one cannot yet decide. But especially at this stage, the ruling power of faith, the ruling faculty of faith, is very strong. The power of faith becomes powerful. And so too, virya or effort, one has the power of courage, the courage to avoid doing wrong, and the courage to admit what one has done wrong, one's faults, and the courage also to do what is good, to the extent that faith and effort, saddha and virya, are good, then sati also is good. And the observing power of sati is very good. It can observe even small, tiny things. Especially the sati is able to observe very subtle levels of kilesas, the basest type of thing that can happen in the mind. And also, is the very moment the mind starts to wander. Because the power of sati is good, the mind falls collectively on the object one moment after another, one object after another, and thus the power of samadhi is very good. Because of the collectedness of the mind, the power of knowledge also becomes good. Panya. So these 5 powers, faith, courage, the power of observation, the power of stability, and the power of discerning wisdom. If these are good, then one is able to control one's mind, and one can rule one's life. When the ruling faculties are good, so because of this, the strength of the ruling faculties, one is able to control oneself so that one doesn't err. And to the extent of one's faith, to the extent faith is powerful, the other powers become strong. So one has the power to master oneself. And this is what the practice is for, to learn how to master oneself, to gain mastery of oneself. And so one not only is able to do this, but one also gains feeling for other people. One understands is very well how others feel, and one no longer wants to cause others any type of trouble at all. And even the little bit, even harming someone or something in a very small way, one feels a lot of empathy for the person. So this is very much needed in the world. This quality, this is one of the qualities of a good person. When at the stage of Udiyabhya Jnana, the quality of piti, strong rapture, both Obeka piti and Pharana piti arise, and this feels very good. So for example, one feels like one is no longer standing on the ground. One doesn't have anything beneath one, but the body feels like it's being elevated. Or one feels that joy is just pervading through all one's cells. So this is the type of rapture that one feels. And because of this rapture or piti, there comes tranquility of body and mind, passaddhi. And one's body feels light and gentle and so on, together with the tranquility. And then the quality of happiness, sukha. So at this time, the quality of one-pointedness, ekagata, or samadhi, is mixed together with sukha and piti, the happiness and rapture. So it is not very strong at this point. But the teachers tell the yogis there are better things to come. So when the yogis continue to practice, what happens is the piti, the rapture or joyous interest, tranquility, and sukha, happiness, these fade away and they don't come back. So at that point the mind is more stable. than before. The quality of ekaggata, or one-pointedness, is better. And the mind is able to be collected on even very small objects, very minute objects. And at that point, the quality of equanimity, tatra majjatupeka, arises. So these two factors are what remained, the concentration of samadhi and also equanimity, tatra majjatupeka. And at that time, the mind is very still and calm. So this is a very stable, quiet type of peace that happens at this stage. And the types of things which were experienced before, for example, when rapture is arising, it feels kind of springy or bouncy, it's a bit active. And this is what is good about rapture. And the quality of sukha is as though it just seeps through one's whole body like the cool air of an air conditioning. So this too is also a good feeling. And as one continues to observe, there's no movement of the mind due to raga or dosa. So the mind is very still. And this type of stillness is even better than the qualities that were good before, this bouncy quality that felt good with rapture and this pervading quality that was experienced with sukha. This calm happiness was described by the Buddha as amanusi riti hoti. This means that this delight surpasses that of the human realm. So, because we are beings that live in the world of the senses, we tend to like to see good things, hear good things, smell, taste, touch good things. And these things which we like, they capture us, they captivate the one who likes them. And thus they are called kama guna. They're desirable things which bind us. And one is not able to separate oneself from the thing. What one likes tends to captivate the one who likes it. So in the practice, though, at this stage, one goes beyond that type of pleasure. The pleasure, the delight that one experiences is called amanusi. So this is beyond the pleasure of the senses. Rati means a delight. This is a delight that arises with momentum. And this is how the happiness of this stage is praised by the Buddha. So in whom does this delight arise? It is said, sama dhammang vipassato. It arises in one who is observing Dhamma, that is, every object that arises in one. Because one observes, one sees the object arising and passing away very quickly. One is practicing according to the method, and thus one sees accurately. So this pleasure arises in one who sees the Dhamma by practicing systematically. One who observes like that systematically, seeing the nama and rupa which are related as cause and effect that arise in one, is called jayino, jayi. This is one who observes whatever arises at the six sense doors one after another, always observing, and so that the mindfulness sticks with the object. Santaceta. This is when one observes in this way, there's nothing to take pleasure in. There's nothing to get angry at. There's nothing to doubt about, because one is seeing how the mind and matter arise and then pass away moment after moment in a very fast way. So at this time, raga, or lust, which grasps on to the object, dies down, and anger dies down, because one knows clearly there's no doubt, no ignorance. So the kilesas, gross, medium, and refined, the kilesas of lobha, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion, are being stilled, and they die down. So there's no movement here. The mind is peaceful. And in such a person, this type of happiness that is beyond human pleasures arises. In order to get special knowledge, the Buddha specified that one should enter a secluded place, sunyagara poeta. So sunyagara is a place that is free of, is relatively secluded, free of human sounds. And one should enter and stay in such a place. And when one is there, one should observe every arising object in one's being. And when one observes in this way, knowledge develops stage by stage until one comes to see the fast arising and passing away of phenomena. At that stage, one experiences a pleasure that is far better than any type of pleasure in the human or deva realms. It is a pleasure that is unrelinquishable, that never gets old. Amanusi riti hoti. So at this point, one is no longer bored with the practice. One's observation automatically becomes continuous because of one's interest. But this only happens for yogis who are respectful in their work, respectful and meticulous. If one performs actions such as bending and stretching carelessly, quickly, if one looks here and there, is looking all over the place, then one's practice, one's mind does not become collected. One cannot be described as jayi, making this steady observation moment by moment. One's practice deteriorates, and then because one's notings are not continuous, then kilesas are sure to enter. So at that point, one loses one's purity of mind, citta visuddhi, and the pleasure, amanusi riti, that is described as far better than any type of happiness of the human world or deva worlds. This pleasure is very far away. One will no longer get this unrelinquishable happiness. Better than 100 years of living without seeing the arising and passing away of phenomena, just wasting one's time with sense pleasures. Better than 100 years of living like that is just one day in the life of someone who does as the yogis do, coming to a center like this and observing what arises in their being, especially when one reaches the stage of udiyabbiya ஞāna. This one day in the life of one who experiences in this way is better, is higher than 100 years in the life of one who never sees like this. This is what the Buddha said directly. And those who have come here to this 60-day retreat so that they can see to what extent they have gained a benefit for their life, Sayadaw will speak today about how to measure this, how to measure the benefit that has been gained. So the Buddha said, Yoja vasasatang chive, apasang udiyabhyang, that a life of 100 years, if one is to live 100 years without seeing the fast arising and passing of phenomena, if there were no sila, if the person did not keep sila, it would be even worse. But if there is no knowledge, if this knowledge does not arise, then it means also that there is no samadhi. So, sila may or may not be there. But if not, if the person had no sila to quell the gross kilesas, and samadhi not present to quell the obsessive kilesas, no knowledge, then even though the person were to live 100 years, their life would not be as valuable as one day in the life of a person who practiced and saw udiyabhyana, the stage of the fast arising and passing away of phenomena. Just one life of being able, one day of being able to see, one day in the life of a person seeing udiyabhyana is better than 100 years of not seeing it. So the Buddha gave this a way to evaluate. And the yogis who have come here for 1 month or 2 months, some more, compare this with your experience. Compare honestly. Compare yourself with this honestly, seriously, not carelessly, and not favoring yourself. So how much value has been gained one can see for oneself. If one has reached this stage, then one will remember those one loves. One will remember one's parents or one's children, one's relatives, and one will want them to get this type of happiness. This is metta, the wish for the other's welfare. And one feels that, if they don't gain this happiness, then they will continue to suffer. And one doesn't want them to suffer. This is the feeling of karuna. It arises in a special way at this stage. To the extent that knowledge arises, very distinct loving kindness, metta, and karuna, compassion, arise. And these are true qualities, not false. When one practices also, one gains better understanding of how to weigh what is beneficial and what is not, what is suitable and what is not. Whenever one has the chance to act or speak, plan on behalf of oneself or others, this knowledge of whether the thing one plans to do is beneficial or not, and if that thing is suitable or not, one's ability to weigh this becomes more mature, and thus this ability brings one better protection than before. One can control oneself better, so that one does not cause any harm. So the Buddha also said, Panyaya atanang rekanto parang rekati, that with this knowledge of what is beneficial and not, the ability to reflect on what is beneficial and what is not, and what is suitable and what is not. This leads one to one won't break one's sila, and one won't let one's mind become full of kilesas. So one will just, because of this knowledge, one is able to protect oneself. One is protecting oneself with this knowledge. And in doing so, one doesn't harm others, paṇḍitā. One is able to control oneself with wisdom, and thus one protects others. And sometimes there's the feeling for other people, karuna, which arises, and then this is the idea that one understands how other people would feel if they were harmed. So this understanding arises, knowing how other people would feel, and so one doesn't want to cause that for other people. Thus, with this feeling of compassion, one protects others. And by this desire to protect others from being harmed, one also protects oneself. Karunaya paṇḍitā atanang rakati. So this is not something that can be manufactured, this quality, this personal quality. It can't be purchased. It can't be obtained through any type of material means. But when one practices, one gains this ability to control oneself. And so one not only has the ability to weigh what things are suitable and aren't, but one also understands how other people feel, and so one controls oneself so as not to harm them. And this is true culture, true civilization. In the world, what people call culture and civilization, what is commonly called this, has no meaning. So, more important than making the whole world peaceful, first of all, is to make one's own individual world peaceful. So when one has the ability to weigh what is beneficial and what is not, and what is suitable and what is not, the ability to feel, when one makes one's own individual world peaceful, one gains this ability to weigh what is beneficial and what is not, and suitable and not, and to feel for other people, to put oneself in their place and understand how they feel. If one's individual world is not yet peaceful, then one needs to work to gain this, first of all. So one needs to practice the method of satipatthana. And if one reaches at least the stage of udiyabbiya jnana, seeing the fast arising and passing away of phenomena, then one will be truly human. And one has the ability to control oneself with paññā, with wisdom. The power, this is what is meant by the word bala, or power, the power to control oneself. So when one is able to have a mindset of loving kindness and karuna, wishing for others' welfare, then one will be able to understand how other people feel. One will gain the ability to put oneself in the position of others, and so one won't want to harm anybody. So one will be able to protect others with one's loving kindness and compassion, metta and karuna, and therefore one protects oneself controls oneself from harming them. So for oneself, this is very important to have a peaceful individual world, like a fresh oasis for oneself. And if there would be one individual oasis, and then another individual oasis, and another 2 or 3 or 4, many little oases in the hot desert, then if we have many, they can group together and bring relief. So first one has to work in order to create one's own fresh oasis, for oneself, and then for one's group, their first individuals and then collectively. This is important for the world. But now, because the world is extremely hot, there's almost no oases left in the world. So understanding this, if one practices and works to gain this type of peace, understanding this, one practices and works to gain this type of peace. And if one has not created this type of oasis for oneself yet, again, if one tries again, one can get it later. But one thing to be careful about is that one can't be careless in the practice. One can't just sit and think in doing the practice. One has to follow systematically the instructions. That is the only way one is able to create the oasis. So, although Sayadaw said, okay, if people have not gotten it this time, later on, it will if one follows the practice, it will occur. But that only holds true if one works systematically and follows the instructions. So if one has practiced for 2 months already and has not yet reached the stage of Udiyabhyāñāna, then it won't make any difference trying again unless one changes the way one works. So one has to evaluate one's situation and see what is missing. One has to try to fill up what is missing, fill up the gaps. And if something is not being done correctly, then one has to make it correct. So that is what is most important, is to fill up the gaps in one's practice and to correct what is not straight. So Sayadaw has tried to show people how to do this with the Dhamma talks. And tomorrow will be the close of this 60-day, this 2-month retreat. So for today, this is all he wants to say, and may you be able to try to make your own individual oasis of peace. Don't settle for a loss. Work to make a profit so that you become a true human being and develop special human knowledge. So Sayadaw hopes that you will be able to practice and develop the knowledge that will make you able to control yourself and protect others, accomplishing 2 things at the same time. He urges you seriously to work to do this. That's all for today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.